What's up guys, Travis Sherman here with another exciting tutorial, and brace yourself because with the content we're covering today, we're gonna need a bigger boat. Now, just to refresh your memory, we are covering the basics, the essentials to video editing, and we are picking up right where we left off in Adobe Premiere Pro. But before we get to that, let's be honest, I know why you're all really here. So, without further ado, here is the joke of the day. Drum roll, please. That's a long drum roll, I know. That's because I'm building anticipation. Why don't directors of photography smoke? Because it would take them all day to light it. I know. We've even got sound effects this time. We're stepping the game up. All right, let's get back to business. Okay, so remember, a successful editor has two things on their mind: efficiency and organization. Efficiency in organization is going to be key when you start your editing process. Now, oddly enough, some of the most questions came from before we even opened up Premiere Pro last time, and it was with our file folder system on the desktop. So let's switch over to the screen, and let's go more in depth a little bit about that process and why we do it. So you see on the screen right now, we have one folder. This is a pristine desktop, and this is what I would encourage you to do. Have a super nice desktop where it's very organized. Now, if most people, most schools I should say, have multiple people on the computer, what I would encourage you to do is to go ahead and right-click, new folder, and create a folder with your name on it. That way, you know everything associated with this person is in this folder. Then, if we open it up, what I would encourage you to do is have subfolders. So, for instance, we could have one that's called broadcast, or we could even call it packages. Okay, so we have packages. We could create another subfolder titled films. We could create another subfolder titled hype videos or live streams, whatever you want to do. I would create subfolders. Then within these subfolders, like let's go to packages, this is where I would create the projects. For instance, the Edge, or maybe we have one called Corona, or who knows, right? So I would encourage you to do that. That way it's highly organized. If anybody needs to come over to your computer and assist you, or they're like, hey, do you happen to have a shot from the coronavirus? You know exactly where it should be. You'll see in the Edge folder right here that we even have subfolders for lower thirds, voiceovers. So it's just the more organized you are, the easier it is for other people to help you, for you to find and locate files. So this is going to be a huge benefit for you. So make sure that you are as organized as humanly possible. Okay, so let's move forward. We're going to go ahead and open up Premiere Pro and cue the music. Can't get enough of the music, I know. So just as a refresher, we're going to recap real quick what we discussed from part one. If you didn't get a chance to view part one, wow, was it a thriller. So go ahead and go to Springdale Public Schools YouTube channel. Look for Adobe Premiere Pro, Editing 101, Part 1. But for now, don't go anywhere. Let's do a quick recap. So right off the bat, as we discussed yesterday, all your projects that you've created are going to be right here. Another quick way to do this is if you go into the Edge folder, you can double click on Editing 101 and it will open up immediately. We talked about organizing your workspace. We talked about how you can move things around by just clicking and dragging them around. We talked that you could resize windows to how you like. We also talked about creating workspaces. So if you go into Window, Workspaces, you can save as a new workspace, which we did. We created a default one. We talked about what a file reference program is. That's very important. So if I were to import a video like this, right? It's in here, there it is. If I were to now move this file, let's say I just moved it to a different location, Premiere Pro can no longer recognize where this file is located. So it's very, very important that once you start editing, you do not move your files. Do not move them, otherwise you're going to have mass problems. Let me go ahead and move that back. All right, we talked about our first shortcut keys as well. So we have Command S, which is save, and then Command Q, which I'm not gonna do, but Command Q quits. All right, so that recaps everything. Now let's get back into it with part two, where today we are going to go over the basics of importing and organizing your workspace. And stop the music. All right, so let's do this. So you have essentially 3 ways to import footage. Remember, you have 4 different windows: project, source, program, and timeline. Now, in your project window, it's very important that we know those 4 windows, because if I say it's located in your source window, or it's located in the timeline, or it's located in the project window, we need to be able to pinpoint where that is. So in your project window, we know we're in our project window because it has a blue highlight around it. So we're in our project window. We can go to File up at the top, and we can go to Import. It's that simple. That's probably the longest one of the 3. I don't really encourage that one. The next option is if you right-click in your project window, you can go to Import, and it does the exact same thing. Or, my personal favorite, if you just hit Command-I, it will pop up the window. That's probably the shortest and easiest. As editors, we want to be efficient. So what I would encourage is, with your right hand, operate the mouse at all times, and with your left hand, operate the keyboard. That way you can multitask. Some of you are saying, Sherman, what if I'm left-handed? Well, I would encourage you to be right-handed. That's real simple. So, here we go. I'm going to hit Command-I, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the shots and the voiceovers and the lower thirds. Make sure you don't select the Editing 101 project. It doesn't like it when you do that, so we're going to select all of this, and we're just going to click Import. It'll take a few seconds depending on how large or how many shots you've done. This project was produced by 2 students, Nick Luttrell and Jules Velquette. They did a story on a training facility, so we've been gracious enough, or they've been gracious enough to give us this footage. So we're going to use this for our learning process today. In the future, we'll probably move on to some different footage, but for now, we're going to use The Edge by Jules Velquette and Nick Luttrell. Okay, so they shot a lot. Come on. Almost there. And got it. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do right now is I'm going to come down here into your project window, and there's a button right there that says List View. If you click that, it will turn them all into the names of the files. Right now, it's easier to work with this. We will go over the difference between List View and Icon View. List View and Icon View. So right now, let's turn it to List View, and we are going to pull up our very first shot. So if we double click on the icon right here, it pulls up a shot in our source window. Now remember, this is a preview to what you want to edit. Okay, so the big thing to note here, in your project window, you'll notice the icons have a green and a purple icon. The purple icon means it has video. The green icon means it contains some type of audio. I don't know if we have any shots. That doesn't look like it. If we go into voiceovers, it should. Nope. They also have purple and green. Sometimes they just have purple, which means it's just a video. Sometimes they have green, which means it's just audio, like if we were to import music. It's important to know that this contains both video and audio. Let's move over to our source window. So we've got a shot lined up in our source window, and the first thing we're going to look at is this right here. This blue thing is called a timeline marker. This depicts where in the shot you are, or where in your project you are if you're editing in your timeline. So you can click and you can drag this, and this is what we call scrubbing. So you can scrub through the clip and you can kind of see what it is. This is important for the process today. We'll be doing a lot of scrubbing. You can clearly tell that this is some type of interview. So we're scrubbing through the process. We've got some type of interview. If we were to double click on the next clip and we scrub through, this looks like some type of B-roll of the athletes training. So you can tell quickly what these shots are. All right, we also have our next shortcut key that we're going to discuss, and that is, if we come over here, I'll just pull this up so I know that he's talking. If we come halfway through the timeline and you hit the space bar,
their sport or their craft, or they do well, or they
The
get an
space
award.
bar will actually play the video, or if you press it again, it will stop the video. So that's your next shortcut key, is the space bar. If you're just bizarre and really weird, you could also hit this
Sit
play
back
button right
quietly,
here,
and I gleam.
or the stop button right there. So space bar, again, we want efficiency and organization. The most efficient way is if you have your left hand ready to go and you just hit the space bar.
Excited and proud for them.
Okay, so that's what I would encourage. All right, let's move on to what we're going to actually be doing today, and that is going to be creating bins. This is important for organization. As of right now, you can just look. You have no idea what these shots are. You'd have to actually go in here and click on them. We've got that. We've got, I don't know what's down here, this, right? So we've got a bunch of different shots. You have no idea what these are. It would take you forever to actually go through these. So here's a little tip, a little piece of advice. What we're going to do is we're going to right click in your project window and we're going to go down to New Bin. Where'd it go? Did I click on it? There it is. For whatever reason, it stored it in the voiceovers. You can just drag these up and out, and they will, there we go. So what I'm going to do now, if you accidentally did not label your bin, you could just double click on it, and it will allow you to change the name of bin. So we're going to name this first one, Interviews. All interviews that we have are going to be stored in that folder. So we already have another bin titled Voiceovers. We also have one titled Lower Thirds. So if you drop the drop-down arrow, you'll see our lower thirds in there. If you hit the drop-down arrow, you'll see our voiceovers in there. And our first shot that we pulled up is our first interview. So we are going to go over, we're going to drag the icon up into Interviews, and we're going to let it go. Now if we drop this down, there it is. It's located in there. Helps the process a lot. Let's go over to our next shot. Our next shot, again, if we scrub through, some type of B-roll for sure. So we are going to come down here, right-click, New Bin, and we're going to name this one B-roll. And we're going to drag that up into there. And there you go. You have your shot of B-roll. Again, B-roll, we could drag this up. But here's something that's going to help you. If we click on this, we know this is B-roll. If we click on this, again, B-roll. Click on this, again, B-roll. We've got B-roll again. B-roll. So you can see there's a lot of similar shots. They're all associated the same way, B-roll. So what I would encourage you to do is go ahead and double click, scrub through these, find all the B-roll at once. We got some great moving shots there. And remember, all you have to do is double click on the icon, it'll pop up in the source window, and then just scrub through. I always encourage people that shoot to shoot overwhelming amount. You cannot possibly shoot too much. It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. That just blows your mind, I know. Lots of B-roll. All right, so that one's kind of different. This is the outside. It's called the Ed Sports Training. That's kind of the outside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the previous one. All of these shots over here, all of them, are pretty much the same thing, and that is B-roll. So if I click either the first or the last clip, I'll click the last one, hold down Shift, actually, sorry, let go of Shift, come up here, hold down Shift, and click the first one. It will select all of those at once, and you can just click and drag that into B-roll. So we've got another one. We can name this one, I want to go over here and click New Bin. We'll name this one Outside B-roll. That could be the building or something. So we've got outside B-roll, back inside. So we'll just put that in outside B-roll in. Okay, let's go back. Let's see. We've got more inside B-roll. Very happy with the amount of footage that we captured. That's always a plus. So all of this is B-roll. Okay, so we move on to our next one. This is clearly another interview. So we're gonna go back up here, scroll to the top, hold Shift, click, and now we can drop all this back into B-roll, and we have this, which is a interview. Okay, so again, we can drop that one into interviews. Looks like they did a second take, interview. And it looks like they did a third take, interview. So we're gonna hold Shift and select both of those, interviews. We have another person that is clearly an interview. So we'll drag that into interviews. This is actually Jules Velquette, so I can tell you right now that this is probably the stand-up. So again, we'll create another bin, right-click, new bin, stand up. And we'll drag it in there. And she's in a different location. Again, Jules Velquette, so I know that this is probably her sign-off, so I will right-click, new bin, sign-off. And I'll drop it in there. And let's see what this other stuff is. This is more B-roll. Great. So we will select all of this and we will put that in B-roll. Okay, so now we have some great organization pretty easily that you can find stuff. The big thing, let's go back over list of view versus icon view real quick. So if I'm on list view right now, if I pop up the icon, here's what I would not recommend. I never recommend going into icon view. What it does is every time you go into that folder, did you see what happened? It created a new tab, right? So if I go back into project real quick, let's say you're like, you know what? I need to find a B-roll shot, so I'm gonna double click on this. It opens a new tab, right? Then you go back to project and you're like, you know what? I actually need an interview. We'll double click, it opens up a new tab, okay? And then you're like, I'm gonna go back and do more B-roll. It opens up another tab, okay? So you can see that things are becoming more and more claustrophobic. Your effect controls over here is actually starting to disappear. You can click on this and pull them up, but again, efficiency is what we're shooting for, so I'm gonna close this. I'm gonna close this one. We'll go back to our project, and I'm gonna go into list view. Let me show you what the difference is. Now, if I go, I want to find a shot of B-roll, I can just click this drop-down arrow, and I can go through it. Okay, that's what I would recommend. I do not encourage you to do icon view. It creates more tabs, it creates more cluster. It's very, very difficult to stay organized when you create so many tabs. Do not, I repeat, do not, when you're using list view, double click on this, because again, it's going to create more and more tabs, more and more chaos, and that is not beneficial to you. So if you ever need to look through your bins, just click the drop-down arrow, and then you can go through and use your source window to preview the shots. Okay, we are going to define what a sequence is. So a sequence is a series of shots to create a continuous flow of events. A series of shots to create a continuous flow of events. Now this could be a package, which is clearly what we're editing. It could be a film, so you have multiple shots within a film to create that film. That is called a sequence. So the thing that we are actually going to create, you can see on the timeline, it says no sequence. We can actually create a sequence by right-clicking, new item, and sequence. And we can call this the edge. We can also create a new bin and label it sequences. And we can drag this up and put it in the sequence folder, bin, sorry. And now your timeline looks a little bit different. If for whatever reason you close out of this and it looks like this, all you have to do is go back into sequences and double click and it opens it back up. Why do we want to create sequences? Well, to stay organized. For instance, in films, very rarely does one editor do the entire film. You may have an editor that only does sound effects. You may have an editor that does the first third of the movie. You may have an editor that only does special effects. You may have an editor that only does color. So it'd be very beneficial if you created multiple sequences for each of those, right? The first sequence could be titled Corona. The second sequence could be titled Corona with special effects. The third sequence could be titled Corona with special effects audio, right? And then you could have a final Corona. So you have a bunch of different sequences that you're able to work on, and that's gonna help you stay organized. All right, so we've got a fully organized workspace right now. We are ready to start editing, but unfortunately, that's the time for the day, guys. So we're gonna go ahead and hit Command S, Command Q, and that will shut it down for today. That's our time. That's going to wrap up our second part of Editing 101 tutorial, and wow, was there a lot of information. Make sure you tune in next time as we actually start going into the editing process. We'll talk about some shortcut keys that's going to help you out immensely. Plus, let's not forget the joke of the day, and honestly, that should make you want to tune in all by itself. It'll be a memorable one. I'm Travis Sherman, and don't forget, where we're going, we don't need roads.